You guys, I'm at Disney World right now, and you have no idea what I just found. That dinosaur's back looks like a sine curve to me. I just noticed that the Eiffel Tower is kind of in the shape of a cosine curve. Do you see that?
Hey, check this out. I'm eating lunch at Cinderella's castle, and I just saw that these candlestick holders kind of look like tangent curves.
All these curves really makes me want to graph a trig function.
Wow, seeing all those trigonometry graphs out in the wild reminds me that you need trigonometry every single day. So let's learn some trig graph basics. Your amplitude is your absolute value of your A. This determines how high your graph is. The period of your graph is the space taken up by your graph. It determines the boundaries on either side of your graph. The phase shift also helps determine boundaries. It determines how far along the x-axis your graph moves. Be careful, because in your equation, your c value is actually negative, so you have to use the opposite of your c value. Vertical translation is the easiest one to find. It's your d value. If it's positive, your graph is going to shift upwards. If it's negative, your graph is going to shift down. Your intervals tell you what your tick mark should be on your x-axis. You can find these by taking the period and dividing it by 4 for sine or cosine, and you can divide the period by 2 for tangent graphs. Let's learn how to graph a sine curve. I'll use this equation to demonstrate. Here are our A, B, C, and D values. Identifying these will help us find the rest of what we need to know to graph the function. Our amplitude is just our absolute value of A, so it's 1/2. Our period is 2 pi divided by B, so that gives us 4. There's no C value in this equation, so our phase shift is 0. The vertical translation on the graph is 2 because our D value is a positive 2. Next, for intervals, we take the period, which is 4, and divide it by 4, which gives us 1. So our tick marks will be 1. Let's put those on the x-axis now. Your y-axis can basically be whatever you want. It can help you see the graph a little better. Let's use our vertical translation to mark a midline, and we'll use our period and our phase shift to determine the boundaries of the graph. Next, plot some key points on the y-axis and at the end of your period and right in the middle, and then use your amplitude to go up half between all of those points. Next is the satisfying part. Just draw a big curve through all the points. And there it is, you have a sine curve. Alright, the fun's not over yet, folks. Let's do a cosine curve. We'll start out again by finding our A, B, C, and D values. Next, our amplitude is our A value once again, which is 2. Our period is 2 pi over B, which gives us 2. And our phase shift will be our C value over our B value, which gives us 1. The vertical translation is positive 1, so the graph will move up 1 unit. Lastly, let's find our intervals. This is our period, which is 2 over 4, which gives us 1/2. So our tick marks will be 1/2 on the graph. Let's put those on there right now. Once again, let's use that vertical translation to mark a midline, and we'll use the period and phase shift to determine the boundaries of our graph. This one moves over 1 whole unit. Next, mark some key points on the edges and on the middle of your graph. This helps you with the shape of the cosine curve. And then connect it with a big curve once again. And there you have it, a cosine curve. Alright, now tangent curves look kind of scary, but they're not scary if you know what you're doing. You know the drill, A, B, C, D values. We don't have an A value, but that just means our amplitude is 1. We do our period, which is 2 pi over B, which gives us 4. And our phase shift is 0 because we don't have a C value. The vertical translation is -2 because our D value is -2. So the graph will shift down 2 units. Okay, now let's do intervals. That's our period over 2, and hold on a minute. Remember, for tangent, to find your period, you use pi over B, not 2 pi over B. So let's redo our period. Now we'll do our intervals again, which is our period 2 over 2, and that gives us 1. Let's plot those now, and use our vertical translation to make a midline on our graph. In the middle of your period, in this case on the y-axis, put a dot right on that line of your vertical translation. Next, use your amplitude to go up right next to your asymptote. Next, go halfway between each of those points and mark a dot. Now connect it all with a big curve, making sure not to touch your asymptotes, and you're all done. There's a tangent curve. Look at all that. You just learned how to graph a sine, cosine, and tangent curve. Now you're a pre-calc master.